afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here at the Pack Memorial Library on this lovely Saturday afternoon for stories. My name is David Joe Miller, and I welcome you to an afternoon of Tales from Beyond. Tales from the Red... What? Let's start again. Tales from and Beyond the Red Rocker. I'll get it right. I'm going to make very brief announcements here, just little regular housekeeping things. We're going to have two parts to the show. We're going to have a brief intermission in between the two parts, at which time you're welcome to check out the refreshments in the back. The restrooms are out in the hallway right behind you as you came in. The refreshments are courtesy of friends of the Pack Library in the North Carolina room. They're also our sponsors, so please give them a round of applause. I'd also like to take us back to 1961, at least technology-wise. We had phones back then. If somebody called you on the phone and you weren't home, they called you back. Please pull out your phones and let's silence them because they'll call you back. They'll call you back. Silence them or turn them off so we won't disturb your neighbors during the show. Now, I struggled with an introduction for Gwenda Ledbetter. I really struggled because Gwenda Ledbetter is such an iconic member of our storytelling community. Inspirational. She inspires us. She inspires me as a storyteller to want to be a better storyteller. And my storytelling community, they feel the very same way. No introduction is necessary for Gwenda Ledbetter, the story lady. So I'm calling back on Catherine Wyndham the way she asked to be introduced. Her name is Gwenda Ledbetter. She's a story lady from Asheville, North Carolina, and she tells stories. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And I've seen people I haven't seen for a while. And some of them remembering stories that I kind of remember. Right. How many of you here remember seeing Tales from the Red Rocker on Saturday morning? Of course, these two are my kids, right? This hand up there, over there, right? Yeah. Anyone else? And David, right? Well, you were on it. Anybody remember any of the stories from that time? And who's that?
Amy Butterworth.
Amy, and yeah, she remembered Gallylanders. They had to be 8 minutes long. I know I told Jack and the Bean Tree because we watched it on Saturday, and John's mother was there, and she said, "What? You are going to have those children breathless, getting Jack up and down that bean tree so fast." I had to. Anyone else remember any of the stories? Day before yesterday, I think it was, I went out the door. I do a morning walk. Hooray for walkers. And I looked to see if I was going to go down the hill or walk up the hill. And there was a man making his way up. We called it Suicide Hill. He stopped, paused, turned and looked at me, walked over and said, "I just learned you're the story lady. I think that's wonderful." And it was like getting a Medal of Honor for all those 16 years of learning those stories and going on one day and taping four for a month, right? And it all started with a story. In October 1959. We're driving up Old Fort Mountain. John is on his way to being the first neurologist in Asheville, North Carolina. And Bob and Becky are in the back seat. And he pulls out to pass a truck. If anybody's been up Old Fort, you know what that's like. I looked and saw the flat land getting further and further away. And I said, John, is there no top to this mountain? And then he said, Gwenda, these mountains are 13 million years old. And on and on. We got to the crest just above Black Mountain, and he took it really fast, and the children both go, woo-hoo! And became instant lovers of mountains from that day on. And Carol is too, and so am I. But it took a little longer. It took a lot of walking trails. Anybody here walk trails? and hearing the stories themselves that came from this place. In 1961, that's a good year, Pete Seeger came to town. And John and I both loved him. We went and he told Avi Yo-Yo, and some of you tell that story, I know. And then he said, there'll be a storyteller down in the auditorium. This was at the Asheville auditorium before the new seats. And he said, his name is Richard Chase. And he wrote and collected the Jack Tales and the Grandfather Tales. So the next day we came down, and Becky remembers putting her chin on the chair in front of her. And Bob, who is a percussionist, took the seat and banged it up and down. He was around 3. And then this very slender man came out with an interesting face, and he stood there in front of us and said, I am Richard Chase. I collect stories in the mountains, and I'm going to tell you one. One time, there was a little boy, a little girl, an old man, an old woman, and a little pet squirrel that lived up on the mountain. And one day, the old woman said, I'm going to make me some biscuits. And everybody grinned. She made the best biscuits you ever put in your mouth. So she went to the cupboard and she moved this over there and that over there. No sody. No sody saleratus. She said to the boy, go to the store, get me some sody saleratus, and don't you forget what you're going for. So he put out the door, singing, sody, sody, sody saleratus. And across the bridge, sody, sody, sody saleratus. And into the store, sody, sody, sody saleratus. He got some sody saleratus, he says to the store man, who said, son, there it is. I heard you coming a mile away. So the boy picked up that sody and he went out the door singing, you can do it too if you want. Sody, sody, sody saleratus. You heard the story. Well, we got to the bridge, and out from under the bridge came a great, big, old, ugly, hairy bear. And he said, I'm going to eat you, you and your sody saleratus. And he picked up that boy and swallowed him right down. Well, when it didn't come, the woman said to the little girl, go to the store, see what's keeping your brother. And she put out, and she sang too. Sody, sody, sody saleratus. And across the bridge, sody, sody, sody saleratus. And Sody Saleratus. The store man said, yes, honey. He was in here a minute ago. You'll find him. He's out on the road playing somewhere. And she turned around and went out the door singing, Sody, Sody, Sody Saleratus. And she got to the bridge. Out from under the bridge came that great, big, old, ugly, hairy bear. And he said, I'm going to eat you. I ate the little boy. I'm eating you too. And he picked her up and he swallowed her down. Well, maybe it was more of a swallow. And when they didn't come home, the old woman turned to the old man and said, will you please go to the store and see what's keeping those young'uns? And he put out, he did not sing. He went, down the road, and across the bridge, and into the store. See a little boy, him and asking for Sody Saleratus, and a little girl asking for him. Storman said, yes, sir. I've seen them. They was in here a minute ago. You will find them, you know, children. They're out on the road playing. He turned around and he went out the door. And he got two. Out from under the bridge came that great, big, old, ugly, hairy, bear. And he said, I ate the little boy, him and his Sody Saleratus. I ate the little girl. And oh man, I'm going to eat you too. Oh my Lord, said the old man. I'll never see the end of that baseball game. Down he went. Well, the old woman walked back and forth. She finally turned around to the squirrel and said, if you want anything done, you have to do it yourself. Isn't that the truth? And he turned around, went out the door, hunch, across the bridge, hunch, into the store, and she said to that store man, you see the little boy? Him asking for Sody Saleratus, a little girl asking for him, and an old man asking for everybody else. And the steward said, yes, ma'am, they was here. I don't know where they are. She turned around and went out the door, hunching. And she got out from under the bridge came that great, big, old, ugly, hairy bear. And he said, I ate the little boy, ate the little girl, ate the old man. Old lady, you look mighty skinny. But I'm going to eat you too. Well, she was kind of thin and tall. And it took him a while. And when he started, she started. Went down until they thought it was the noon siren and went over. And back at the cabin, the squirrel heard it. And he jumped to the table, to the floor, went out through a hole in the screen door, went across the bridge into that store, sat up on his hind legs and went, and the storeman said, don't tell me. Let me guess. You are looking for that little boy, that little girl, that old man, and that old woman. I don't know where they are. The squirrel turned around, went sailing out the door, got to the bridge, and out from under the bridge came the great, big, old, ugly, hairy bear. And he said, I ate the little boy. Looked kind of bored about it. I ate the little girl, I ate the old man, ate the old woman, little squirrel. You look like an after dinner meant to me. And he reached for that squirrel, swallowed him down. He did not do that. Oh. The squirrel ran up a tree. And he got to the end of a limb, and he jumped to the nearest tree, just like all the squirrels you ever saw, and those you didn't. And here comes the bear. And he says, if you did that, with your little legs. I know I can do it with my big ones. And he galumphed down the branch. He got to the end, and he said, 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to go. He fell all the way down to the bottom, and wide open, and out stepped that little boy, that little girl, that old man, and that old woman. And she turned around to that boy. She said, where in the nation is my Sony salary? There is a little bit more end to that story, but I love her. Because when they got home, she made those famous biscuits. They were so light, they just about floated off of the pan. And she gave so many biscuits to that little squirrel, he just about popped wide open, just like that old bear. You all did a really famous thing, you know, in folk tales and folk songs, if anything's repeated, it's yours to join in on, right? And I'm glad you did. That was lovely. So, there was Richard Chase. He finished up the story. And we all left to go home. And I'm wondering if maybe I could do that too. I read all the time, but I never told a story. Now, it so happened that John, my husband John, who came, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, came to this town to be the first neurologist in Western North Carolina. But he loved both things, everything to do with both. And so we went up to Banner Hill to hear some traditional storytelling. And the stage had 3 women wearing long skirts and poke bonnets, and they clogged. There was a man playing the fiddle, and then this very tall man got up, and he moved to the stage, and he spread his legs, and he spread his arms, and he said, "One time." And Ray Hicks, the best mountain storyteller in the world, opened his arms to us and pulled us into the story. And I was struck. So I went back. He invited us to come to his house up near Banner Hill. John couldn't go, so I went. And we sat on his porch. I brought him a watermelon, and the water was splashing off that watermelon. And the feisty dog, he crawled up under the porch. And the rain was hitting the tin roof, making those bing, bing, bing sounds. And he started telling stories about Jack. We went through 2 or 3, 3 or 4. If you ever heard Ray, you know, they just kind of continued. And I thought, you are in a holy place. A holy place. Later, I went to, with Connie Reagan Blake, who was here, and it was when he was really ill, had the hospital bed right beside the front door. And Connie went with Rosa out to the garden to see the dahlias, and Barbara Freeman told me that he really loved having his feet rubbed, and it made him feel better. So I went to rubbing those feet. And when he'd had enough, I stopped, and he says, "I want you to take my story about the cow eating my britches." I said, "What?" "I got that story about the cow eating my britches. I'm giving it to you to tell." Here it is. Ray was really young. His mom made him a jacket and pants out of flour sacks. And that was good material in those days. And he went out to see his friend, a young girl. And truth, he went because her father told stories. Anyway, while he was there, a snow come up, and it was so much that the mother in the house said, Ray, you cannot go home in this. You'll have to sleep here tonight. So they made him a pallet up beside the wall. And he pulled up some quilts, and he was fairly warm. But there was some breeze coming in the side between the chinking and the logs that had gotten loose. So he took off his new pants, and he stuffed them in the hole. And he filled up the quilts, and he went on to sleep. Well, next morning he woke up, and there was a breeze blowing in on him. And he looked, and the coat and his pants were gone. And he looked out the hole, and a cow was eating them. At that moment, the woman of the house came in to put the milk on the table, and then she went back out to feed the chickens. And he was starved. He was a growing boy. So he got out, and without his breeches, he went over to that pail, and he lifted it up, with the handle going round his neck. And he lifted, and he drank, and just as he about gotten full, the door opened, and here come that woman, and him standing there. He took off running, and he got home. His mother said, Ray Hicks, where have you been that you come home with no breeches and a pail of milk around well, stand up so folks can see you. She and Barbara, but can you tell them a little bit about that?
We just got back. I just got back yesterday, but I was partners with a storyteller, my first cousin, Barbara Freeman, dear friend of Gwenda's too, and we love you, Gwenda. But we were partners as the folk tellers for 20 years, from 75 until 95. And we just got back on Thursday night. The Library of Congress had us do a performance, and it was only the second time in 25 years that we have told stories together. So it was very exciting. Thank you.
I forgot to tell you about, I've got this black beer, the dark beer up here on the table. Years ago, as a gift. And years ago, I took Hazel over here on the camera for lunch, and she says I served her dark beer. She fell in love with it. So she bought me to celebrate that memory, and thank you very much. Good. John Bridges, who worked here at the library. How many of you knew John? Right? Oh, yes. Mr. Art himself. He was into everything artistic. And he sang in the choir with fine tenor voice. When he said your name, you felt you were being announced to royalty. Beautiful John. And he said, Gwenda, you have a good voice. I think you should try out for South Pacific. I did, and got to sing 101 pounds of bun, and that's my little honey bun. You know it. And then I met him coming out of the North Asheville Library one day. We moved across town so the kids could have a neighborhood. I mean, yeah, right. We grew up, John and I did. And the books were spilling out of my arms. And he said, do you tell to the children as well as read? I said, not yet, thinking about Sodi Saleratus. He said, I think it'd be a very fine storyteller, Gwenda. I think I can get you a place to tell at CAC. We might find you some money. And that sounded good. Because John wasn't making a whole lot then. So, they took me on, and Ruth Easter, it was her idea to the tales on television. And she designed the program, The Tales from the Red Rocker, and she put Way of the Storyteller in my hands. How many of people know that book? Not many. It's a good book. Even if you're not into storytelling, it's beautiful because it tells the history, etc. So I took it to bed with me that much, and I started telling the stories on the Mr. Bill. It was going to the TV station. It was like going to a castle, you know, that beautiful building. And the lobby was so tiny. You came in, there was a desk, and then there was the sofa. And I came in, and Mr. Bill came running down the steps and showed me the room and the camera, etc. And how long the stories would be. It was to that same place that I met David Holt one day, because John asked that he be on Tales from the Red Rocker because of his music. And so I went to meet him, and he was sitting on that sofa. David's here, and you had a lot of hair in those days. He looked up at me like, you know, who are you? And hugged that guitar, which is that. How many guitars do you have?
Not a fair question.
Too many.
What?
Too many.
No. You have as many as you want. Anyway, he joined me in the, because by that time I'm getting that 4 stories a month, the new ones to put on television, was getting, and so David said he would share it. So he did too, and I did too. And he started light on the stories, but ended up, well, with David Holt. All right. I've got a lot of books up here. You're welcome to look at them and break. When is break coming? When do we break?
2 minutes.
10 minutes? Anyway. Okay, and on these, there's the 3 stories that were published over at Jonesboro. There's the Grandmother Tales and the Jack Tales. And if you haven't read them, you need to. And you can check them out in this library, okay? And there's the Magic Orange Tree, because I hope to tell a story from that. And another one from Diane Wolfstein. Books saved my life. I don't know, how many of you are book readers here? Oh, it's up a hand. I mean, there are things books do. I mean, you hold it in your hand and you can turn the pages. It's really nice. When I was 7, we had to move from a place that I loved. There was the Chesapeake Bay and the beach down the street, and I had friends on every corner, and my best friend Tommy lived next door, and if he bought it, I said it, and the other way around. And my dad comes home and says, we have to move. I've been transferred. It was impossible, but we did. And we moved to a town called Nancock and lived in a boarding house. Do they even have those anymore? But in this boarding house, there was a woman called Miss Maybe Foskey. The movie Wizard of Oz had not come out yet, but she was the exact facsimile of the Wicked Witch. She wore black. Her eyes were black. Her hair was black. She'd look at you and stare at you, and you knew you'd done something bad. Couldn't remember what it was. She chewed everything she put in her mouth 100 times, and I counted. At night I dreamed of giant teeth. Really would have lost it, except there was this imp of a man. His name was Captain Clydo, and his shoes were black, but they were shiny, and he almost tap danced with them, you know. And twinkle in his eye, and a fedora. Men wore fedoras a lot in those days. And he had a black shiny car, and we get in it and go looking for Robin Hood's barn. And I looked that up when I got older, and it says, to look for Robin Hood's barn is to look for the right answer in circles. Well, our circles were 3 times around the block, right? But he danced the car, we sang. And I found him in a story not long after I'd been here that turned into the storyteller. And the story was the bee, the harp, the mouse, and the bumclock. An Irish tale. Once, there was a widow and she had a son named Jack. And they lived together well and happy, although all they had to the name were 3 cows. But they sang of an evening, they ate potatoes, they ate vegetables. Then one day, the potato crop failed. Things got really bad, and the widow said, Jack, you're going to have to turn out the brandy cow and take her to town and sell her tomorrow. Never say it twice, Mother, said Jack, says he. So in the morning, he takes a stick and he turns out the brandy cow, and off to town they go. But they get to the hill just above the town, and he looks down and there's a crowd of people in a circle outside of the pub, not in it. So he says to the cow, wonder what they're looking at. Cow, being an intelligent beast, did not answer. Didn't want to get mixed up in what was going to follow. Down they went. And they looked, and there was a little man inside of that circle. Had on a little deeshy-doshy hat and a jacket, you know, and shoes that were fine. And he had the strangest animals Jack had ever thought of taking around. There was a bee, and he had a harp, the same size of himself, Irish harp. There was a mouse, a little bit bigger, wore a deeshy-doshy cap, and there was a bung clock. Bung clock does not mean clock that won't run. In Ireland, it is a cockroach. Well, he set these things down on the ground. He starts to pat his foot. And the bee and the harp begins to play the harp. And the pots the pans, the wheels the reels, Jack and the cow, the men, the women, the boys, the girls, all begin to dance about in, outside out, and upside down, and all out, oh, the things they went, oh, what a dancing time they had. Well, the big man reaches, pulls his animals back to him, and everybody stands around and laughs. Didn't you look the fool with your belly coming up like that? And you were a fool too, throwing your legs this way and that. And then the wee man turns to Jack and says, there you are, Jack. How would you like to have these animals? Oh, I'd like it fine, but I got no money. Ah, but you got a very fine cow, haven't you? And I'll give you the bee and the harp for your cow. Oh, I don't think that would... Oh, you're worried about your mother? Did you say something about her needing her harp lifted? You take this bee and harp down, put it on the kitchen floor, it'll play, your mother will laugh, but she never laughed in all her life before. That's true, says Jack, turned over the cow to the bee man and goes home with the bee and the harp in his pocket. When he gets home, his mother's in the kitchen peeling the last potato they got to their name. And she says over her shoulder, Jack, did you sell the cow? I did, Mother. Or did you get good value? Well, I think so, Mother. And he puts the bee and heart down, and she turned around, and the little bee starts to play, and the pots, the pans, the wheels, the reels, Jack and his mother, the table, the chair, the house itself, all began to jump and inside in, outside out, upside down, all over the place they went. Woo! Well, Jack sees his mother's face getting red. He was afraid she might have a heart attack, so he picked up the bee and the heart. And they did laugh for a long time, but then she straightened herself up and said, Jack, what have you done? You've taken my good cow to town and traded her for this bee and heart? Well, it's a talented little fella. But we can't eat it for supper. You'll have to take the brownie cow tomorrow. Did I say the red? No, it's the red cow tomorrow. So in the morning he takes the stick in his fist, turns out the red cow, and off to town they go. He doesn't say anything to the cow about the crowd of people, but it's down there. He knew what was inside. You know what was inside. He goes down, wiggles his way through a few, and there's the wee man, and he's got the mouse and the bum clock. And he starts to whistle. And the pots, the pans, the wheels, the reels, Jack and his cow, the men and the women, the dogs, the cats, the leaves and the trees, all began to And then the wee man says, there you are, Jack. How'd you like to have this mouse? I cannot. Oh, your mother. I know about your mother. Well, look at it this way. You take home the mouse, you put it down, other animals, you know your mother's going to laugh. Yeah. And he wanted the mouse so bad, he turned over that other cow. The wee man goes off with her, Jack goes home with a mouse in his pocket. When he gets there, his mother's on the porch, but there are no more potatoes to peel. I don't see the cow, Jack. Right, Mother? It's older. Well, Mother. Oh, no, not again. He pulls out the mouse, the bee, and the harp. And the bee and the harp starts to play the harp, and the mouse begins to jump around the pots, the pans, the wheels, the reels. Jack and his mother all begin to and then again, he sees her face get red, and he snatches up the mouse, and she says, Jack, what have you done? You've taken my good red cow and sold her when we've nothing to eat in the house, and you brought home another mouse to feed. Oh dear. Bad, huh? Well, there was nothing to it but to turn out the last cow. And he did it. And he marched off, swearing to himself he's going to do it this time. He gets there, there's the crowd of people, and there's the little man, and all he's got is that tiny little bee. No, excuse me. All he's got is the, thank you very much. And he set the bum clock down. It was a wonderful thing to see the little thing dancing. And the music was wonderful. And the little man turns to him and says, Jack, you got to have this bum clock. I know about your mother, but look at it this way. If you take it home, you'll have the whole set. You did? And when he got home, his mother was at the fence, and she had her arms like this, and she said, Jack, I don't see the cow. And he said, you sold her. And he's nodded his head. Show me the color of your money, boy. And he pulled out the animals, and he did a valiant job, but his mother all of a sudden is sitting with her apron over her head, and she's weeping her eyes out. He goes and sits on a stone. How can you do this to your own mother? Along down the road comes an old woman. You see how it is in Ireland. These little men keep running around making toys. And here come the old women to clean things up. What are you doing here, Jack? And he says, nothing. He says, why aren't you all trying for the King of Ireland's daughter? What are you talking about? The King of Ireland has a daughter, hadn't laughed in 7 years. He says, anyone can get 3 laughs out of her, will get her hand in marriage and half the kingdom as well. If that's true, it's not here, I should be. And he goes in and says goodbye to his mother, and he gets his animals, and he heads off to the castle. Well, when he gets to the castle, there's stakes all around, you know? And there's hats. He says, whose hats are those to a guard? Well, that's the ones who come and try and fail, he said. And Jack says, mighty big crowd. But he sends word that another had come, and everybody comes out and sits in little golden chairs, much like yourself, only they were gold, right? He gets an eye on the princess right away. And so he takes a string and he leads the little animals, and they're hopping along behind him. And the princess looks at Raggedy Jack and these little animals. She stops to laugh. She said, that's one of you, one part of you, one, my lady. He takes the string away and he puts the animals down. He gives a stone to the bee to sit upon, and the bee sweeps back his wings, flexes his feelers, and starts to play concert style. And the mouse and the bumcock take hold of each other like they haven't seen each other in 200 years. And the pop's the band, the wheel's the reel, Jack and the queen, all the rest. Jump and he gets about upside in, upside out, upside down, all about, all over the place they went. Around and saw that foot swinging, and she laughed so loud it sent the bell down in the cathedral to ringing. But then there was no more laughing, and Jack's starting to get really worried, so to speak. And all of a sudden, the mouse did a turn, swept his tail to the bum clock's mouth, and it starts to cough. I do not know if you have ever seen a cockroach cough. It is a remarkable sight. That comes part, right? At the end of the story, right? And so, everybody, excuse me, the princess looked and saw that, and she set up a lad that went clean around the world and come back with all the joy in it. Excuse me. Yes, it's Jack kneeled down to her and said, that's 3 parts of you, one, my lady, I have you all. The wedding lasted for 9 days and 9 nights. I was there myself, that's how I got the story. And before I left, they gave me brogues, broth, slippers of bread, and I came home dancing on my head.
Storytellingcalendar.com is where you need to go look. Storytellingcalendar.com. We list everything that's happening in the Asheville area, the Jonesboro area, storytelling-wise. So go there. If you have anything you want listed, contact me. Listing is free of charge. 10-minute break. Refreshments in the back. Restrooms in the hallway. We'll be back at 10. Thank you, Gwenda.
Well, told the Irish, you know, the stories are in you. It's amazing. All you have to do is the storytellers kind of get them started with your memories and places that you have, the pictures you have in your head. They just come and happen. It's wonderful. And it's exciting to be part of it. Right? So I told over long, and I was going to tell you, and I hope to tell you about this paying attention I'm doing right now, which is a morning watch, and I go out and look and see what's about. And so it's that paying attention came because I was tired on watching us kill each other on Google. And I thought, and of course the political scene, we won't talk about that. I thought back to wise people that I've known in my life, and I remember sitting at the end of a lecture or something by Frederick Buechner, who's anyone know here? Yeah. Anyway, at the end of it, he said, "Pay attention." That's it. Pay attention. I thought, what? Pay attention to what? And then I thought, because he was a poet, that he meant everything. He meant the sun, the wind, the way the day feels, what you see, the birds, everything. Because we get stuck on watching our phones and the television and the computer, and we forget all about that. That's part of the world too, it's part of us, right? I wanted to tell you about reading Diane Wuchsbein. Today she's being commemorated in Central Park at the Hans Christian Andersen statue. She was a very good friend, Connie's friend, and David's too. And she wrote a lot of books. And one of the places she went to get books was Haiti. And the magic orange tree, I guess they got that here in the, I know they have several copies here at the library, I believe. And it's filled with stories that she got from the people there. This one I would like to dedicate to the migrant children that had to leave their parents. Topingi. That's what her name was, Topingi. You can say it if you want, Topingi. Her mother and father were both dead. She lived with her stepmother. Now, stepmothers are wonderful people. They step in when the mother's not there. But this one wasn't. She was selfish. She wouldn't let Topingi have any of the things that were hers, that belonged to her parents. One day, Topingi was in school, the stepmother's in cooking, and the fire went out, and she needed more wood. She called Topingi, but of course she didn't. She's in school. So she had to go into the woods herself, and she did. And she got a lot of wood, and she made a great pile. It was too heavy for her to carry. And so, there in the woods by herself, she called, "Help, my friend, come help me carry this wood." Out from behind a tree came an old man. What he was doing in the woods there all by himself, I don't know. But he said, "I'll help you carry the wood, but will you pay me?" "I'll find something." He took it to her house, put it down, and said, "Now, what will you give me?" "I'll give you Topingi. You can take her home and be your servant." Topingi, Topingi. How do I know a Topingi? "Well, you go to the well tomorrow. She'll be there dressed in red. Call her name, she'll come to you." Now, Topingi was inside washing dishes, I think, as he heard what the woman said. And so she went to her friend's house. "Oh, friends, do you have a red dress? Can you come to the well with me tomorrow?" And they nodded. They're friends. So the next day, the man comes down the path to the well, and there are 3 girls amongst all the other children, and they all have on red. "Which one of you is Topingi?" "I'm Topingi," said the first. "She's Topingi," said the second. "We're Topingi too," said the third. "No, which of you really is Topingi?" "I'm Topingi, she's Topingi, we're Topingi too. I'm Topingi, she's Topingi, we're Topingi too. I'm Topingi, she's Topingi, we're Topingi too." And they danced round and round, and the old man, he went down the path with that stepmother and said, there were three, and they all had on red. You gotta do better than this. And she said, go tomorrow, she'll be dressed in black. Well, Pinky just had 2 dresses, red and black. She went out the door having heard and asked her friends, yes, of course, we'll be there. So when the old man comes down the path, there are 3 girls all dressed in black. And he says, which one of you is the Pinky? And the first said, I'm the Pinky. And the second said, she's the Pinky. The third says, we're the Pinky too. No, no, no. And they started singing and dancing. I'm the Pinky, she's the Pinky, we're the Pinky too. I'm the Pinky, she's the Pinky, we're the Pinky too. I'm the Pinky, she's the Pinky, we're the Pinky too. And they went round and round and round and screamed. And he went down the path to the old stepmothers and said, 3 girls dressed in black. If you don't get this settled, I'm taking you home to be my servant. So, she said, don't worry, she'll be dressed in red. That's all she has. But the next day, of course, the Pinky heard which were friends. They all showed up, and they're standing around the well, and here he comes, without him even saying which one, they say, I'm the Pinky, she's the Pinky, we're the Pinky too. I'm the Pinky, she's the Pinky, we're the Pinky too. I'm the Pinky, she's the Pinky, we're the Pinky too. That old man, he went down the path to the stepmother's house, and when she came to the door, he yanked her to his house where she washed his dishes forever. And when the Pinky came home, she had all the things of her fathers and mothers for herself. Y'all are good singers, right? I think I better tell you the goose story because I'm making all the stories too long or longer because you, whatever it is in you that pulls them out, right? So, got into paying attention. Outside my window, I go to the light every morning and look out, and there's the silver bell tree, there's the Japanese elm, there's the pond, and there are the geese. They're Canadian geese. They got those long, elegant black necks. And there were 16. Well, I love watching them because, you know, geese, they're very social. They do everything together. And they do lines, like the first one will be in the front, and then they line up behind him, and so they'll swim around the pond, making silver streaks. And of course, they do some fighting. That's pretty bad. And then they talk. They do this strange kind of bobbing their heads at each other, and that's talking, I think. So I told you there were 16. Well, one day, 14 of them left. The reason I know there were 14 because they left 2 behind. And I couldn't figure it out. Why? They're so social. Why didn't those 2 go? Were they being punished? I couldn't figure it out. They enjoyed each other, swam around, raced together, and did a little noodling, whatever. Then, one day I watched as a female climbed up on the bank, walked over to a bunch of sticks, climbed up on the sticks, and settled herself down. And I knew that was a nest. And she either had laid the eggs or she was laying them, and she was going to hatch them, and I was going to pay attention. So every morning up come the Lycas and I see the white patch on her breast. And he himself is over here. Males make wonderful sentinels. And he stays just a little ways off, but in enough distance so he could get there in a hurry if she was in trouble. And I watched. And this is the life we had. She didn't move off that nest. So then I started worrying, when was she eating? I didn't see her eating. I looked for some tall pieces of grass or something near that she could nibble on. She did not get, unless, I stayed watching her as much as I could. Maybe she sneaked off, but I didn't see it, and I couldn't see that he was helping her. I put cracked corn out for him, and he flew across the pond and enjoyed himself, but she never left the nest. And one day, finally, she got off the nest, went in the water, swam over to him, took a bath, splashing water under her wingtips. Then she swallowed a fish. I saw it going down in her throat, and climbed out on the bank and started to graze. Oh, she was going to take care of herself. I was so relieved. And then everything settled down to me watching her hatching, hidden, guarding. And then the rains came. It was a bad week. The rain in April is usually soft, gentle spring rain. This was hard, driving rain. It bounced off her back like bullets. He went into the trees and to get some shelter. But there she was on that nest, and she wasn't moving. I thought, what can I do? All right. Maybe I can get the ground crew to take a little plastic and throw it like a tent. No, because he himself would stick out that rapier-like neck and go after them. That wouldn't help. Well, I watched as the pond water got higher and higher, and my next fear was it was going to go up, exceed the bank, sweep the nest, eggs, mother, off the end of the pond into the field below. It stopped raining. And we went back to watching and guarding and hatching. Now, I didn't know how long this was going to take, so I went to Google. And they said 28 days. And I thought, I was getting a little weary, but then one night, I was lying in bed, and both of them started honking these really loud honks. And there was fear, there was anger, I didn't know what. And I thought, okay, get a kitchen knife, get in the car, go around, drive around to the bank above the nest, and then stumble down the pond bank, probably fall in the pond. It was no good to them at all. The honking stopped. I didn't know if they were still alive, but there was nothing I could do, and I knew it wouldn't do any good to go look. So in the morning, I lifted the glasses, and there was the white patch on her breast. And there was himself in the water guarding. I never learned what happened that night. We were getting up on Mother's Day. One morning, I looked out, and himself was close to the nest. Closer than he'd ever been. She was on the nest. I looked, and 5 little heads came popping out from under her. They were here. I wanted to hire the Asheville Symphony to play the house. They got out immediately on those tiny little legs, and they had them in the water right away. I didn't know if some turtle or fish would come and swallow them, but they didn't. And then they got in the water, as I said, they played around. So that night I went to bed and got up the next morning, looked, and there they were, still playing around. So I went and listened to Kristen Tippett. It was Mother's Day, looking for some wisdom. I came back. The little family was on my side of the pond. Those babes with legs that long, had swum across unless he'd taken them on his back and there was a goose boat instead of a swan boat like they had in Boston. But no, no, no. They were there. It was a miracle. And then to prove they really had done it, they got in the water, and there went himself first, and the babes after him, and her at the end. Well, later on, my yard looked like a poultry farm. There were 3 turkeys. There were a couple of families of ducks. There were crows. There was another goose family with bigger goslings. And I looked into the south. Here came the new family. I don't know if they walked or if they swam. I grabbed up the cracked corn that I had poured out for him and ran and poured a great long stretch of it on the ground. And those babes went after that corn like they had known it in the egg. And I looked at the family and said, you have done a tremendous job. And to her, you are one magnificent mother goose. I'm telling you this, and you can do with it what you will. The 14 geese came back, and one day they all swam over to the nest. And part of the geese came and circled one part, bless you, and the others in the water circled it. They made a complete circle, rough, but a circle. It was like a ritual. It was like a worship service. And I remembered, and I went to read it because I have it on the wall, some words from Black Elk, the Native American mystic. He wrote, we build our teepees like bird's nest. The power of the world is in the circle. Everything wants to be round. There's one woman that I didn't mention that I want to, that was important to me in the storytelling. Mary Chiltowski. She was Cherokee. She was the wife of going back Chiltowski. And she and I met in Western Carolina at the university, having been asked to tell stories to the students. I came wearing a picnic dress, sort of the rick-rack around it trim, you know, and she had on a sheath. She was a short woman, really a lot of curly hair, and this sheath. She looked at me and she says, maybe I better go home and dress Indian. That's wonderful, wasn't it? But she liked my stories, gave me a whole sheath, she shouldn't have, a whole sheath of Cherokee Indian stories, which I gave to Lloyd Arnich, a very fine Cherokee storyteller. But I kept one. It was a creation story. And to me, telling that, especially right now, it's good. In the beginning, all the world was water, and one great rock. On the rock, there lived an old man, a storyteller, and a boy and a girl. All day long. The old man practiced his stories. That's what storytellers do. And the boy and girl played. But one day they threw the ball, it went off the rock into the water, and so they swam out and brought it back. And they swam out and brought it back, and this happened all day long. So at the end of the day, they came to the old man and they said, we need more rock. What? We need more rock. We throw the ball, it goes into the water. And he looked at them. He saw their arms were getting longer and stronger. He went to the side of the rock and he called the sea people. Ah, ah, ah. And they came and came and came, and soon the whole rock was surrounded with silver. And he said, as you know, the rock here is our home. It's plenty big for me. But the children, they need more rock to grow on. Do any of you know where we might get something to make more rock? There was a bit of silence. And then the old fish, the largest of them all, said, far down at the bottom of the ocean, there is a certain clay. If you got that, you could make more rock. Which of you will go down? Silence. And the old fish said, it's too far. If any of us went, we would die. And the fish began again to swim away. And a small voice was heard, I'll go down. And they looked, and there was a mud turtle climbing on the rock. I'll do it. Did you not hear what the great fish said? If you went down, you might die. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'd like for the children to have more land to play on. And without another word, he slid off the rock and disappeared. They waited for one moon to cross the sky. At the end of that time, the fish began to swim away. They waited for 2 months. And the great fish, the old one, he turned and slowly swam out of sight. They waited for 3 months. And the old storyteller went to another part of the rock, looking sadly at the children, and began to practice his stories again. But the children, they watched. They watched the place where Salagugi had disappeared. They did not move. Hunkered down, they waited in day and night, and suddenly at the end of the 4th month, something dark popped to the surface. They reached out and brought it in. It was the turtle, Salagugi. When they turned him over, on the bottom of his feet was the clay. So though he had given all he could, he was dead, he had found the clay. The old man comes and he makes it into 4 small balls. He sends one to the north, one to the south, one to the east, one to the west. Where it landed, you could see land forever. Land for the boy, the girl, all the rest of us. Tell stories on, love each other, and make a good earth. And land for Salagugi to be buried in with great respect. So we have a lot to leave up to the turtle. What a wonderful time I've had with you today. It's been beautiful. Is there something you want to hear more of, or?
Uncle Billy's hunting mark.
What?
Horace the mule.
Oh my God.
We have a beautiful story.
It's time for somebody else to learn that story.
Nobody can tell it like you.
Yeah. It's funny how I got that story. It was during the telling it on television that time when I was doing stories over at Montreat to some people from Camden, South Carolina. And when they went home, I got a letter, and it was somebody from the city government of Camden. And I think his name was Green, and he said, this story reminded him of me. Mildred Ann Bennett lived down near the Intercoastal Waterway. You know, that bit of strip of water that's deep enough for good-sized ships to go. And there are bridges. There are those bridges that are permanent, and then there are drawbridges. And there was a drawbridge right close to Mildred Ann's home. Now, out behind Mildred Ann's house, there was a barn. And in the barn, there was a mule. He was old, but he was family. She'd go out in the night and scratch him behind the ears and talk to him. One night, she went out and Horace looked bad. His eyes were drooping, his nose was dragging the floor, his belly was sagging, and she said, "Horace, you're sick." And she went down the road to Doc Finney, the town veterinarian. Doc Finney, you have got to come and look at Horace. He is bad sick. Well, the good doctor had just sat down to the first hot meal he'd had in about a month. He turned around and looked, and it was pot roast with little vegetables cuddled up next to it. And there was a biscuit all open on his plate, still hot enough to melt butter. Mildred Ann, go home and give Horace a dose of mineral oil. And in the morning, if he's not any better, I'll come take a look at him. But Doc Finney, he might bite me if you don't give it by mouth. You put it in the other end. Oh, she went home and she looked. She couldn't find a funnel. But her eyes came to light on Uncle Billy Bennett's honey horn with solid brass and had golden tassels hanging down. It was just the right shape. So she took it and she put it where she had to. She reached over her head for the mineral oil. Unfortunately, her hands came to close on the turpentine. And she poured down that horn a generous dose. Horace came to immediate attention. Everything that had been hanging low shot straight up. He made a sound like a rocket going off, turned around, kicked out the side of the wall, and disappeared. She stepped through the hole in time to see him clear 3 small bushes and a tree. And every time he jumped, the horn would blow. Every hound dog in that town knew the sound of Uncle Billy Bennett's hunting horn like their mother's voice. They took off after the sound. Pretty soon, they went past Tom Jones's place. He's out on the porch with a tall one, which he did every evening. Well, he looked to see what he was seeing. Horace, with that horn where it was, golden tassels blowing into the and all those dogs. He looked at the drink, threw it into the hydrangeas, and never touched the stuff again. So all this entourage is heading toward the bridge. Well, Bill Polson was tending the bridge. People took turns. He pranked her up because he thought a boat was coming. Horace and the dogs went into the water. They had a time getting Horace out. But the one who caught the trouble of the whole day was Bill Polson. He was running for sheriff the next week. People in town said if a man did not know the difference between a boat coming up the waterway and a mule with a horn up his rear end, he did not belong to be in public office.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Gwenda, you are a national treasure. Thank you for being here. Storytellingcalendar.com to keep up with us. Feel free to come up and give Gwenda a send-off. Thank you.